Hi, welcome to Unapologetically You. And today we are kick-starting our new season. So, season 3, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. It will be focused on hybrid performance for female leaders. So, what does that actually mean? We're looking at stresses, anxiety, brain fog, and essentially burnout in high performance. And that could be in sport, that could be in corporate environments, female leaders who are in charge of people and finding the effects that they are doing too much, that they have a lot of responsibility in their decision making, but they are doing a lot. So, what happens? So, we are looking at this new podcast series. Kelly and I will be talking about what people are dealing with regards to extreme exhaustion, and that's what the series will entail. We'll talk about female exhaustion in corporate environments and in sport. We'll be looking at how we deal with self-sabotage, the importance of nutrition for brain function, how stress manifests into physical pain, and more importantly, what do we need in regards to recovery. So those are some of the snippets that you have to look forward to in this season. So I hope you can join us on YouTube. If you're watching, you can click subscribe and hit the like button. We would very much appreciate your support in that. We are also found in Patreon, and you can see us on Podbean. So if you'd like to follow us on that, that would be amazing. All the links in the description are below. And so, yeah, welcome to our brand new season of Unapologetically You, specifically hybrid performance for female leaders.
Yeah, thanks, Tuls. That was a really good intro. You covered it all.
I know, there was a lot on that, wasn't there?
It was a lot, but that's not all we're talking about today. I mean, we're not talking about all of that today. We're going to cover parts of it in depth, right?
Yeah, for sure. Both. Say that last bit again, Cal.
Some experience on both of those, on all of those.
Yeah, for sure. So today, Kelly and I will be kind of just kick-starting our stories. It's going to be more of a casual chat. And if any of you listeners resonate with this, we would love your input. We would love you to put comments below if you're watching this on YouTube or even on Spotify. But for us today, we're just going to talk about our personal experience of exhaustion. We'll have little snippets of the way that we tackled exhaustion. But Cal, tell me, I know you know my story about exhaustion. I don't know if you know the full story, but when was the first time you experienced complete exhaustion?
Look, as a mum. As a young mum. But in terms of working, is that what you're really referring to?
No, say both, because there's going to be women who have kids and families.
Yeah. Look, lack of sleep or broken sleep is my torture. So if you want to know all the family secrets, just, deprive me of sleep and I will tell you, because that is really that was the linchpin to my exhaustion. And it's hard. It's really hard. So you know what the problem is, but you can't fix that problem. You can't say, I'm not getting any sleep, I'm going to get more sleep. You just can't. So on top of that, I was also working, and work is a stress. Lack of sleep is a stress. And then comes in you need the snacks, or you want the snacks, and that's the sugar high. And when you come off that sugar high, that's a stress as well. So it's just layer upon layer of sometimes big trauma stresses and sometimes little trauma stresses. But as we both know, all the stress that you have in one day there's a box this big that it fits in, and there can be the lack of sleep, which fills up half of it, and then all the other little frustrations are other little parts of the stresses that add up, and it only takes one little dropper of something else to overfill that, right? And so that was my first experience of recognizing that lots of little things were causing my overload, my exhaustion. And then I did get to sleep longer as the baby got better at sleeping and growing up. But then there's other little stresses that come along as well. And still work was hard. It was really, like, it's a career. It's a career for us, right, Tuls?
Yeah.
So, and we're trying to make a career out of it. So we were putting in long hours. We both know that the careers we've chosen, or the career we've chosen, is a tough one and requires longer hours than many other industries. And it requires weekend work, and you're working late into the evening. So that didn't change. So that was one thing that I couldn't change, and raising a child was another thing I couldn't change. So everything else had to change. And that's the only way that I could deal with it. So as it went on, different jobs. I think, Tuls, let me say, when I started working in rugby league, Cronulla Sharks, that's when I really hit the wall. And that was about 2014. And my health suffered because of it. I caught glandular fever, or I was diagnosed with glandular fever. And it took me a long, long time to recover from that, or what I considered recovered.
And so, and there's a common thread in this. A lot of women that I spoke to who have experienced extreme exhaustion or burnout, I feel like that is just played around in the modern day. The term is played around, and people forget the impacting significance of it, and they just claim it as, oh, avoid burnout and don't burn out, or I'm so burnt out, without actually recognizing what.
Yeah, it's like when people say they've got the flu, right, and they've got a cold or a head cold. Different things.
It's massively different, because you're leading up to this pinnacle of exhaustion in every facet of life. It seeps into everything. It's like water. When you spill water, it gets everywhere, right? And you can't contain it quickly enough. And that's exactly what happens when you burn out. You spill a large amount of water from a bucket in your bedroom, probably bigger than that. And the cleanup will not be easy. And this is the length of time that people have not understood, the length of time that it's been for people to overcome this. It doesn't just happen overnight or over a couple of weeks. It takes months, possibly years, right?
Years for me.
Yeah.
Years for me. So I was really fit back then, really fit, and I was competing at a high level. And then after I had glandular fever, or I didn't know I had it, I knew I was tired, but you're not encouraged to listen to that. You're encouraged to continue on, and because there's there's status in that. There shouldn't be, but there's status in pushing through it, right? And I believed in it then, or thought I had to believe in it then. Anyway, I pushed on as a mum and as a worker. And it just became chronic, and a good night of sleep was not ever going to fix me again. Yeah. So before that, I could do, I was a good sprinter. I was a good fast athlete, but endurance wasn't necessarily my thing, but I could do it. Okay. After I had glandular fever, I could not run for half an hour, and I couldn't run for half an hour for more than 12 months. And it took me probably 3 years to be able to run for half an hour and feel good about it. And that's not like me. And that was not like I could run or do an activity for before. So that was 3 years before I could do that, just that. And it would still take me 3 days to recover. I couldn't do it consecutive days.
Yeah.
So that, to me, like, it niggles in the back of your mind. You know there's something, and you just sort of say to yourself, I'm not thriving. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not thriving. And oh gosh, that's become such a buzzword now, that thrive. You got to thrive, but it hasn't it? But even back then, that's the word I used to myself. I'm like, I'm not thriving. I don't feel like I want to get up in the mornings. I don't feel like I want to do things. I don't laugh. I go, it's not sporadic. I don't laugh sporadically. It's like an effort. Everything was an effort. And I think that's burnout. When things like that become an effort, talking becomes an effort, conversing becomes an effort, relationships become an effort, and they shouldn't ever have to feel like that.
I completely resonate with that. I remember, like, as soon as you're saying that, I was just like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. When, you know, even when I was working in the corporate role, but as a human performance coach, like, yeah, everything just took so much more effort. And I remember just not, the laughter just dies down.
Yeah.
And I've got a history of depression and anxiety. So it reminds me of, you know, when you talked about women pushing on. So I'm just going to go backtrack a little bit. So you're talking about women pushing on in spite of actually going through those symptoms and knowing that something isn't sitting right. How likely is it for you to then fall into depression or fall into those anxiety attacks and postnatal depression? But then you're in this fog like state. You don't really recognize that because you're pushing on so much. You're dealing with the tasks and the moments that you need to, and then you're exhausted because you can't fathom any more things. So you're not being creative, you're not being innovative, you're not laughing as much, you're not bringing your best self, you're not thriving, as you said. But then how do you recognize those signs? Like, when you were seeped in it, like, what happened? Like, I know you talked about relying on sugar and stuff, but I remember relying on alcohol a lot. And I'm not a big drinker. And I'm just like, you know what? This is just taking the edge off.
Yeah. Look, luckily for me, I've never really enjoyed having a drink. So alcohol never was part of my regime. But how do you recognize it? I think instinctively you know, but how to get out of it you don't know, or how to change it you don't know. Because there would have required some pretty big changes in my life to have to change it. You know, I couldn't stop being a mum. I wanted to work and I wanted that career. I'd studied hard for that career, you know, so I didn't want to let that go. And I certainly didn't want to let being a mum go. But those were the two things that were contributing probably predominantly to how I felt and the exhaustion that I felt. How did I get out of it? I changed jobs. And then I changed jobs again. I was still tired, still exhausted. The job I changed to involved a lot of travel. So I was away from home on tours for like 8 weeks at a time. But when you're off touring, and you've been away touring with sports people as well, you are on call 24 hours a day, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though you have a working block, you're available either side of that and truly all night. And if you're not working face to face with someone, you're organizing something or cleaning something up or preparing something. So that to me was an exhausting role. And then I shut up shop. I had also been doing some rehabs working from a clinic, and I thought I can't do both. So I chose the clinic. And then that's when Oz Paralympics came and asked if I would take on a role there. And I said no. And I think that's when I realized I had to make hard choices. Although I did take on that role. I did in the end. But I really looked at that role and went, do I want it? Is it going to be exactly what I want? It really had to fit or tick a lot of boxes for me to say yes for it.
Yeah.
And it did. And I'm so glad I did, because it's my favorite so far. But it took. How did I recognize it is what your question was. I was just putting one foot in front of the other, Tuls.
But that's what I mean. That's what I think that a lot of women who are experiencing these types of symptoms, they're already overwhelmed, just as you described earlier. They've got the box, you've kind of trumped it with the lack of sleep, and then the amount of pressures and decisions and worries and everything, life, relationships, circumstances, everything gets piled on top of that. You kind of
Yeah.
all you can do is put one step in front of the other. So as I said, you're not making room for living because you're just going
Yeah.
through the motions. So
Yeah.
when you said it'd taken you such a long time to, well, you knew you were in it just took you a long time to get out of it. Did you receive any help? Is that why it took so long? Did you even
Probably.
know who to go to?
I didn't know who to go to, and I don't even know if I would have asked for help either. It's not. I will say it's not my personality, but certainly it's not the way I've been brought up. My dad didn't believe in stress. So there was a time when I was studying and I was very stressed. And I said to him one time, I'm stressed. And I love my dad. He's the best. But he goes, stress doesn't exist. So, that's the opinion, and that's what I grew up thinking. Oh, what I'm feeling, it feels like I'm stressed. But it was a bit of a buzzword then as well, right? So I didn't know if I was like hitching my wagon to, I feel tired, this is hard, I feel stressed, or this is tired, I feel tired and this is hard. It's such a fine line between I'm tired and this is hard, and falling over and I am stressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, probably back then at uni, and I was doing a double degree, so it was hard for me. I know people do it, and I know people do it with kids as well. I'm like, how the heck, you amazing freaking human. But for me, just studying was hard. And so I think I would sort of fall over into stress, have a good couple of nights sleep, have a 6-week holiday like you could back then. And I was back on this side of the fence, but then add a child, and then work. And I was more and more often falling over on this side of the fence, and one night of sleep wasn't bringing me back. So would I have asked for help? Probably not, Tuls. Now I probably would. Back then I wouldn't have.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of women in leadership positions, and that could include sport and the CEOs of corporations, of Fortune 500 companies, who just mull along because it's just like, well, I can do this, I've got this far, I'm resilient, I'm strong, I'm ambitious, I'm tenacious, I've got my goals in sight, I know what I want, I know how to get there, I've gotten so far. And it's that strong, determined character that we're talking to, really, aren't we? And
Well, that's who we're going to talk to, yes.
yeah, we're talking to, but also I'm talking to a strong, determined, ambitious character in front of me. Like, we are similar in that regard, and we should call ourselves leaders in that regard, because we've had positions in sport that require leadership. We've managed teams, we've managed coaches. So it's looking at our own selves, being like, well, actually, what did we need at that time when we were exhausted? What situations will be different, because obviously you had a family, I didn't. I've got my family as my mum, dad, and brother, so I don't have children of my own yet. So it's just looking at all of these things, that everybody has their own path, they've got their own story and their own journey. So if we're all ambitious and we're all enthusiastic about the type of job we do, but then it starts to become overwhelming, but we don't want to leave it because that's what we've worked hard for, right?
Yes. So what little things can we take out of that box to stop it from spilling over? Because truly you can recover when it doesn't spill over. So it's those little things that you've either got to take on as a practice, like meditation or better nutrition, or just really focusing on trying to get your 8 hours of sleep if you can, more sometimes if you need it, or me days, me time, and being okay with that, giving permission for that. So, like, Tuls, I do know your story about when you were totally exhausted, but you tell that because not everyone does know that.
Yeah, well, there's two occasions that came to my brain, and when you talked about the year that you recognized there was a lot going on, I resonated with that because that was my first experience of stress, but in terms of something beyond my control. As I said, I've experienced depression and anxiety and things like that, and it runs in the family, so it's something that I've been exposed to. So when it came to, I decided to go from my fitness industry career to strength and conditioning. So I was working as a manager, as an area manager within Cardiff Council, and I was doing my masters at the same time. I was working part time as well. And I decided, yeah, because I did my masters, I was deciding whether I should go into strength and conditioning. So I was like, I've got the basics of the fitness industry, the anatomy, but I want to know more. I want to put research behind my application, which in the fitness world, I know they're doing it now in some areas, but it's not renowned for. It wasn't back then, giving my age away. But I was like, I want to back it up with research. And I know that strength and conditioning, it wasn't just about sport. I wasn't all in just because I wanted to work with high profile athletes. That was a bonus, but I wanted to back it up with research. And for me, I decided to work with children with cerebral palsy. And your first job, working in a disabled population with pediatrics and learning this whole new entity of strength and conditioning, the way of programming was kind of broken down completely and being rebuilt. All of the basic principles that I knew had to be rebuilt. I was then trying to understand the symptoms, the associated problems that comes with cerebral palsy, and then looking at the anatomical, ways that we can help in rehab, looking at science, looking at research to back up what we're doing. And then obviously you've got this child in front of you who basically won't do what you'd ask them to do. And so I was in deep waters. Like I wasn't even sure I knew how to swim at that point. But I was thrown
So
in.
just like you asked me, there's a lot going on there.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Do you know what the tipping point was? Because my answer was no. I had no idea what the tipping point was. Do you know what yours was?
My tipping point was what I would say was being bullied. I felt degraded. I felt abused mentally.
Okay.
And I wanted I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit that role. Similar to yourself, you wanted to just leave that role. And I spoke to one of the directors, and I said, I've had enough. Like I just can't. And for me to quit something is huge. So I was like, I can't. And he said, right, you need to talk to this person. You need to confront this person. And nobody likes confrontation, right? So for me, I'm just like, okay, so systematically write down what I need to do to confront this person, give facts, no emotions. Like, and I'm quite an emotional person. I definitely was back then, way more so. So I'm just like, okay, how can I approach it in an analytical way? And I learned that, and going through these conversations that are difficult, but it's even harder to, sustain that, to remain in that, to not confront it, to not learn from it. So I was like, I needed to leave, but I was given the choice to confront this person. It eventually worked out, but what ended up happening, and that wasn't the breaking point for me, it was months later when in that role where, when you said you're adding so much to the box, having to coordinate, having to advertise, having to communicate with parents, having to coach, having to then, do all of these things, and then being ridiculed. I still got ridiculed for it. I still got pushed regarding those things. And I would take things, much more personally than I do now. I'm still learning, but when I took it personally, I was like, well, this isn't working for me then. This environment, this whole thing isn't working for me. So that's when, just before then, obviously, I remember just using alcohol a lot. Like
Yep.
just going to, like, me and one of the coaches be like, let's just go have a drink after the session, right? And we would obviously bookend that coaching day. We wouldn't be on call, which was fantastic. So we'd be like, right, let's just go have a drink. And as I said, I'm not a drinker. I'm such a lightweight when it comes, I'll have one glass of wine and I'm tipsy. So for me, having second glass of wine, or, you know, just feeling that, oh my goodness, that wine, I really needed that. And I'm just like, that's not who I am. Like, who am
Mm.
I? That I'm going to use alcohol to allow me to de-stress. And I know people do that. And I'm not, this is a judgment free.
No judgment at all. No.
There's no judgment on what people do to de-stress from their workday. And I still enjoy a glass of wine, but I didn't want to rely on it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
I think that's the
changing who I
difference.
am. And that was a
Yeah.
pivotal point for me. I recognized that I didn't recognize me anymore.
Okay.
And that was a
Interesting.
big deal.
Yeah.
But what had happened in later years, where I did actually experience physical and mental exhaustion, and like I said, I only explained that first story because for me, even though it was a big deal, it was nothing compared to what happened 3 years ago. Is when I was in a job that I loved. I was in an industry that I was thriving in. You know, I was
Yeah.
able to be autonomous. I was leading coaches. I was, you know, in the hub of motorsport. I absolutely loved it.
It was your thing, wasn't
Oh
it?
my goodness, I absolutely loved it. And there was high pressure in that environment, but I was thriving on it because I love doing stuff. I love being busy, love being innovative, I love being
True.
creative. And I was given the freedom to do that. And it was working. Like, it was becoming a success. You know, we were having our gym being replicated to another factory. We were getting more and more coaches that were hired. I was like, this is the dream where I can not only, you know, build something from scratch, it could be duplicated, but also we're hiring coaches, we're hiring more people, we're bringing more people in, and they're supporting their family. And this is making a difference for people,
Yeah.
you know. And that's obviously working with people within the factory and with the race team. Like, you can see changes happen, and that's really rewarding. And I went to a concert one weekend. I remember like it was yesterday. I went to a concert one weekend and I was driving because I didn't want to drink. Like I said, I'm not a big drinker, so I'm like, I'll drive. We went straight from my work and we all went to this concert, and it was in London, so it wasn't too far away from me. We all got back the next day and we were just having a little girly chat, as you do in the bedroom. And then the next day, the next morning, I was up as normal, right? Your circadian rhythm kind of gets you awake as normal. And as my friends were talking to me, because we were still hanging out the next morning, my friends were talking to me and I'm just like sagging almost in the couch. And they were like, there's something different. Like, there's something different. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm fine. I'm just tired. Like, it was a really big week.
Easy to
Work was
brush it off.
yeah, work was really crazy. And then obviously the drive to London, and then, you know, driving back and not getting enough sleep. I'll be fine.
Yep.
No, my friend literally, it's almost like they gave me an intervention. My friend literally almost looked at me in a way of it's almost like a motherly advice, just going, if you don't stop now. And she then explained how she went through burnout. And I didn't know this about her. So
Yeah,
she
right.
said she'd gone through burnout and it took her 2 years to overcome that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when she said, you need to stop before you get to that point, because then when you get to that point, it's going to be too late. And I'm just there like, you know what? I'm just tired. Like, I know you care about me, but it's fine. But when she gives warning, like, it's quite scary because she's never done that to me before. And then they were about to leave for Cardiff, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, no, I was almost ordered, don't do anything, just don't do anything today. And I'm not the type of person to sit on the couch. Like, I can't do a zombie, you know, mong out the couch and do nothing.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't. So I said, no, I'll just like, I'll go for a walk or I'll do something. No, stay exactly where you are and don't do anything. The only time you get to move is to pee and to eat. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm never told stuff like that, right? So for me, especially from a friend who never has conversed with me in that way, it was a real big awakening. And still there's me. I was like, the sun is shining. I need to be outside. Like, let me out. And so she's like, open your French doors, like literally just open and get some air in, but don't go outside. And I'm just like, this is totally against everything I know. Like, go for a walk, get some fresh air, you know, be active, probably do something physical to get your mood up and your energy up. But no, I was like, oh yeah, I think I was so tired at that point. I really couldn't argue with her. I'm just like, I got to the point where no, I want to go outside in my head, but my body was like, chill out, like you can't do anything. And then the following days, I remember obviously my training routine had gone down the hill. Like, I was definitely relying on caffeine in the afternoons, a lot of sugar. Like, I like sweets and I like savory, but I'm not big on either or. I was definitely relying on like chocolate, sweets, and caffeine, and I could tell, like, and obviously my waistline could tell me too. And I was like, oh, my body was telling me signals all over the place. I just wasn't listening. And then it got to a stage where I'm just like, oh, I can't exercise, or I just be tired. Like, people say like, oh, but you work out in the gym, like you work out every day, right? And I'm like, just because I work in the gym doesn't mean I work out every day. And plus, the thing is, oh my goodness, yeah, after a working day and being in the gym all day, like, I just didn't even want to look at it. I'm like, I just want to go and leave and get out of this place because I'm tired, right? You just want to sleep, or you just want, sleep basically. But when I ended up thinking, right, my exercise routine is out the window, I'm not training, I'm not getting that energy in the right way, I just couldn't. I just couldn't lift weight. Like, I knew I would do an injury if I did something like that. And the only thing that really resonated was yin yoga. I was like, that's the only thing that I could muster up any energy to do. And that's when I knew that was my big turning point. Like, the confrontation with my friend, the intervention, and then not doing the physical exercise. For me, that was kind of like, oh, this isn't good. Like, how did I end up here? I'm in a job that I love and I'm in an environment that I've always wanted to be in. What happened? Like,
no, you've lost yourself. You have. And what we actually want to tell people is how we got out of that. And I love the way you got out of it. I didn't do it as well as you, but you have really set yourself a course of meditation and responsible exercise. So this is not exercise for the sake of exercise. It's really responsible and really reacted well with the way your body felt and the way you wanted, the direction you wanted to head. And it's really worked for you, hasn't it, Tuls? And you've actually got your own website putting that up for people now, so they can use the same exercises and the same effective routines to get the same result. So tell me about that.
And this is the whole point of it. It's like, it's looking back at our experiences and going, we didn't necessarily know we needed help or seek or, venture into the right area. There was nothing of that time that I was even I didn't even know who to go to for this. Like, like as you said earlier, you're trudging along and you're doing your own thing. You're putting one foot in front of the other. Like, I didn't even know I needed help, let alone where to look for help. It took me 3 months at least to get some sort of understanding of what I needed to do to get out of this. So it took me 3 months to actually just understand, okay, well, what is it that I actually need? Like, how do I venture into this? How do I unpack those tiny little habits that I've ended up, putting on weight, relying on caffeine, relying on sugar, being depleted physically, mentally. I need to then started to take things out of the box, but the box is literally full of things. And I'm like, I don't know which one to pick first.
I know.
So what I wanted to do is look at a course, staging specific programs of how we can look at problem solving. What is it that is your purpose, your values? What are you going through right now? Because everybody's individual, everybody has their own journey. How do we unpack that? And then we're looking at physiological stresses. What are the physiological stresses you're experiencing? What are the cognitive stresses you're experiencing? What do we look at for nutrition for brain function, nutrition for enhancing your mood, enhancing your energy? So these courses that will be specific for understanding what is it you need, and you might not take everything, but you might take something that really resonates with you and you can apply in your life and make those habits. So that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So Kelly and I will talk about it for sure. But for now, yeah, you're more than welcome to either reach out to Kelly or myself. We both provide coaching online, very specific things. So please DM us if you are interested. And then there's also the training platform that I run at Fitness Chicks. So if you thought, I don't know what to do, but I want to do some physical exercise, have a look on YouTube, and under the name Fitness Chicks with an X at the end, we'll put the description below of where the link is, and just reach out to us. And it could mean that either Kelly and I can help you with those resources, or it could mean we can point you in the right direction based on our knowledge, based on the research and the affiliations that we have with other coaches.
Yeah, and our own experience. But I have used the Fitness Chicks platform, and it is beautiful. It is calming, and it's movement, which I love moving, but you do it so beautifully, progressively, and with such a beautiful flow. Do you make up those flows yourself, or not make up, but develop those flows yourself?
Oh, for sure. I think that's just taken me from the fitness industry of being ad hoc, but also my lesson plans. Like as a coach, you're taught to do lesson plans. So what works with the autonomy? What works with your anatomy? What works with, the flow of from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet? So what actually works in a physiological response, and what is it that you're trying to achieve? So all of my programs will have it deliberately aligned so it looks seamless, but it's actually taken a lot of hours and preparation behind that.
Oh, absolutely, the hours of preparation that go behind a program. But you also showed, so yours is a follow along program.
Yes.
So you're doing it in front of me and showing me how to do it, and I love that.
Yeah, and yours is more interactive, isn't it?
I coach live. So I coach mainly people with injuries, as it's just turning out that way for me during the lockdowns and the COVID lockdowns. It's been interesting, but interesting in a bad way, really. The amount of anxiety that lockdowns have caused for people, I didn't really realize the impact it would have on people they are already coached. That had injuries. I work a lot with traumatic brain injury and neural disease. So these are injuries and diseases that anxiety and stress exacerbate the symptoms, right? So, and exacerbate like, they don't just add a little layer on, it's like, so that was a learning process for me and the client, to be honest. So how a little bit of stress, the synergy of a little bit of stress can just change the symptoms that you have or exacerbate them. There's I don't want to talk too much about my clients because there is that client relationship and that privilege, but tremoring and things like that, and even just seeing a little tremor in your thumb or your finger or your toe or your whole arm is stressful, right? So that just adds another layer of stress on. So yeah, I'm trying to wind my practice back a little bit and get people to understand the benefits of breathing. I add a lot of breath work into my programs now. And meditation. I don't know how to run a meditation, but you do. So I will guide people to your website or to a meditation that I found elsewhere that I like, and I try to get them to do that as well. And so sometimes winding back and not actually doing the exercises that you think you do and that you read in Body and Soul, which is an Australian insert in the newspaper, but they always have articles in there. I have a friend who's a journalist for it, so I feel pretty bad saying this, but it's her who told me, because I would always say to her, new research on this, you should put this in Body and Soul. And she said, we actually can't. We have to wait till the research is many, many, many years old before we put it in, because, you know, we can't put cutting edge stuff in, or new research. So by the time it's in these magazines like Men's Health and Women's Health and Body and Soul, it is 20 years old, up to 20 years old kind of research. So we've heard of it and used it for 20 years, Tuls, again giving our age away, but it's new research to some people. And what they're saying now, or what they were saying not that long ago, is like, to barter everything, man, just to barter it. So people are doing 4 minutes worth of burpees and not being able to move for 3 weeks, but also giving themselves tendinopathy at the same time. And anyway, there was so many stresses, as in, like you said, physical stress, mental stress, there's a chemical stress, there's environmental stress, and there's financial stress. They're the 5 main stresses. And when you already have financial stress, chemical stress can be alcohol, can be smoking, can be the laundry detergent, can be the dry cleaning chemicals that you've soaked into your body, can be the petrol station. And then environmental stress is bullying, things like that. And then you've got those 3 or at least 2. You've always got probably 2, and then you're adding 2, like by choice, onto your body. you're overdoing it. And so and that's because they've read it in a magazine and said, yes, but this is what this said, this is what this TV show that I watched said. Like, for probably 5 out of 10 people, 6 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10 people, but not for you. Right? Not for you right now. So I'm trying to implement more into the way I coach people, back to what I've learned from you as well, the meditation, the quiet times, and just thinking, reading, not listening to everything all of the time. So going back to reading for a little bit, things like that. So so my practice is more interactive, but I give a lot of links as well to things like you've mentioned.
Perfect.
I link it back to you. So it might sound that Tulsi and I are just saying Kelly does this and it's wonderful, and I'm saying Tuls does this and it's wonderful, but we really do admire each other's leadership qualities, don't we? And I actually will pass this on to you, Tuls, but it's an article that I read about leaders, not necessarily, well, yes, it called it the best leaders, but it's not necessarily the best known leaders. So you can make that distinction. The leaders who work underground, behind the scenes, don't expose themselves much in the media. And then there are the ones who are always exposed in the media and run high profile companies and are high profile people. So they're the best known, but not necessarily the best. Okay. So this article was about the best, and what a quality that they tried to find differences between them. And they said, look, easy to find differences when you are looking for differences. What's harder to find is similarities. But that's specifically what they looked for. So I think they got 100 different managers or leaders. Managers, they really were, I guess, managers, business managers. And they tried to find similarities. And the highest ranking similarity was that these people were admired by their spouses, by their friends, by their children, by their colleagues, by their friends. They were admired. And people who are admired are more inspirational than motivational. So, and they were also saying that's a good thing. So it's it's harder to inspire someone, but better to inspire someone. Easier to motivate someone, but harder for motivation to become inspiration. So I really do admire you and the way you lead your platforms, your teams of people, and the way you've always worked and the way you work with me.
It's reciprocal. Like, I learned so much from you, and since we've developed our friendship, like, I'll still come to you for advice, you know, whether it's business or whether it's personal. And yeah, we bounce off of each other in terms of, you'll ignite something in me that will make me, you know, align some of the ideas that I've been brimming in my head. You know, sometimes it's like too much, you need to put it down in verbal diarrhea, and you still haven't connected the dots. And I think we still learn from each other, you know, whether it's recommending a book or a research article or things like that. But I just wanted to showcase to our audience that this is not just us having a conversation, that we can actually provide something for you. So stay tuned, because the next episode will be more about exhaustion, but more about the stories that we have probably been using bad habits during our times of exhaustion. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a teaser of, yes, we did accumulate bad habits, and I will dig into what I know my bad habits. I'm going to dig into what Kelly's bad habits were, and I'm probably sure she'll be interested in hearing about mine.
Oh, so, I'll be honest. Yeah,
of course. So stay tuned for the second part. And
yes,
we will catch you on the next episode of Unapologetically You, merging into hybrid performance for female leaders.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tuls.
Thanks, Cal.